Hi guys, how are you today? I thought we would get started with, if you want to just kind of kick it off, I'll kick it off to you, Michael, if you want to give us a little bit about yourself and about Gladius, and then we can switch it over to Danilo and he can tell us a little bit about himself, and then we can jump into some questions.
No, thank you. Thanks for Christine for having us, for having me, and thanks for Logic Tree and you and Word of Logic Day for putting this on, give us the opportunity to come on here and hopefully share some good knowledge for everyone. My name is Michael Bird. I am the CEO and founder of Gladius International. We are a concierge risk management firm. We specialize in everything from cybersecurity, investigations, intelligence work, and the physical security side of things, both nationally as well as internationally. Um, yeah, we started in 2020, so still a relatively new organization as far as Gladius International, but I've been involved in the risk management space since 2015 when I joined on with the State Department. And then later on went into the private sector, spent most of my time in the private sector south of the border as far as physical protection goes. And then, like I said, 2020 came back to South Florida, started Gladius as it is known now. We really wanted to change kind of some of the dynamics within this defense and risk management industry and focus more on building stability and this idea of creating stability so future growth can come, kind of in that wake.
Amazing. And then next, Danilo, if you would like to give us a little bit about yourself and background.
Hi, sure. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Danilo. I work at Generali, a large insurance company headquartered in Italy but active globally. 200 years old, so not so much of a startup anymore. We do pretty much everything that an insurance company does, and within it, I am the group head of innovation, so in charge of all our major innovation projects worldwide, including those that have a social impact, a sustainability component, which is becoming increasingly important in our strategy, including climate.
Amazing. Okay, well, let's kick it off. My first question is for Michael. In Mexico, we see the cartel fill a governance vacuum by offering social services and enforcing order. This order can appear to reduce violence, but is ultimately rooted in fear and corruption. What areas of SDG 16 can we apply to create a culture of lawfulness and accountability?
Yeah, thanks, Christine. I think what's really interesting, especially when we talk about the context of cartels in Mexico, is it really touches on a lot of different topics when it comes to SDG 16, especially if you're looking to root out that corruption, root out that causation, and kind of change the dynamic of the country, especially from like the local populace up, right? We don't see it as much at the top end of the administrative level, and kind of you see that trickle down effect down to the people. Where I think in order to address, and when we talk about SDG 16, the circumstance, I think you really have to start from the bottom up, and that's addressing 16.1, which really is about breaking back kind of all the addressing the causes of violence. I think going into preventing exploitation as in 16.2, and then I think really from there is we starting to build in that 16.3 kind of on. But what I wanted to talk about really briefly, which I think is interesting, is this idea of Maslow's kind of hierarchy of needs, and that as it applies to human. And that's what cartels have done very well systematically in order to kind of maintain their power in Mexico. Is exactly like you mentioned, they fill these power vacuums. They go in, they start building infrastructure, they bring in schools, they bring in internet, they provide food, they provide water. So they're starting to fill all these needs for that local populace in place of an actual government or in place of administrative ties, which then starts allowing the people to really to focus on, aligning themselves with those cartel groups. And so I think in order to start rooting out kind of that causation, you really need to go in and take away that power from the cartels by addressing, what does food look like? What does water look like? What is housing? What is, internet? What is electricity? Get back and actually address these basic lines of needs for the people. And I think that's done through public-private partnerships like we've discussed. And that's because obviously there's a gap there where the government's not coming in and filling these needs, but there's aspects and there's companies, whether it's in the US or otherwise, that can go in and more effectively fill these needs for these people, taking that level of power, taking that level of just hold that these cartels have, take that away, and now we can start focusing on building for growth for the future. And I think that's where we start building into, developing new laws, building new framework for the government, start addressing, outside corruption influences on that local government as well. So I think, but you have to build and you have to root out that corrupt root, or else there's no room for that growth afterwards.
Amazing. Thank you so much. On next, Danilo. Due to the wars in Syria and Ukraine, international migrants have been forced into displacement, a lot of which came to Germany. How can Migrashore social ventures help support this issue?
Yes, thanks, Christine. So obviously, migration is having a huge impact on politics, policies, and everybody worldwide, and the causes are varied. In the case of Ukraine and Syria specifically, we have obviously seen a large influx of these migrants to many European countries, but mainly to Germany. So what has happened since their arrival in Germany? Obviously, migrants are are in very difficult conditions when they seek to relocate to another country. Just the way from their place of origin to the place of destination is already a challenge. And once they make it there, it's sometimes even worse. They face all sorts of bureaucratic, administrative hurdles. They face opposition from some sectors of the population, and simply, especially in the first, usually 6 months when they arrive in a new country, they are in this limbo in which they are not officially protected, but their asylum requests are being examined. So they are really still in an unsettled status that makes life very, very difficult. Once that hurdle is overcome, then they face all sorts of other issues, which are among these issues, the main one and the primary problem they face is that of an accommodation, right? Of finding a suitable place where to live. Sometimes they are given an accommodation from other national or local governments. In the case of Germany, though, because of the large influx of people all at the same time, more or less, has happened that these government-sponsored accommodation run out, right? And even if they don't run out, there is a point in time in which the asylum seeker, the refugee, the migrant is asked to move on, right, from the temporary accommodation to make space for new arrivals, and they need to kind of find something in the private market, which is increasingly difficult. There is a shortage of accommodation in a lot of the Western world. In Europe, this is especially felt. Prices are very high, both for buying and for renting, which is the case of migrants, of course. So it's already difficult for, let's say, local population to rent something. You can imagine how difficult it is for migrants. In addition to that, they need to also face the other hurdle of providing a deposit guarantee on the rent, which is usually 3 months of rent they had to pay upfront. This is a lot of money for someone who comes from Syria, Ukraine, or other countries affected by conflicts. And this is where we saw that we could play a part, right? We obviously this is something that requires public-private partnerships, right? I think it's something where the public is struggling to solve on their own, but it's something also that the private cannot really offer without the collaboration of the public sector. So we're collaborating now in a series of public entities and non-governmental organizations in Germany to help migrants be able to access accommodations by providing them a sort of deposit guarantee in a first instance, so that they do not need to pay this deposit up front. They can rely on the financial security that Generali brings to the landlords, to the owners of these accommodations, and they can just move in. They can pay the rent, which is often subsidized by the government, and at the same time we provide financial backing. At the same time, we're also developing and also starting to offer very cost-effective insurance actually on the contents of their accommodation, and combined with private liability, right, which is the basic form of insurance you need to be able to face any sort of problems you may face with your stay in the country. But this is only the beginning, right? With Migrashore, which is the name of the entity we have created with our partners, we really want to make sure that we create a platform, a suite of products that really seeks to cover all the basic financial needs that a migrant may have during their stay in their host country, and hoping that this can help them settle faster and better, and also prevent some of the issues that come sometimes from these people not settling and facing difficulties which can end up in outcomes that are not desirable to anyone.
Mhm.
Very, very cool. I feel like, Michael, do you want to ask Daniela anything before we continue on?
Oh no, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because again, we talk about Maslow's hierarchy, and what you're talking about is exactly kind of to that, and that's providing one of the main, needs, and that's that housing, right? That's that
Yeah.
shelter, that protective kind of nature. I guess my question is, have you seen any occurrences of where not having maybe the food, the water, these other kind of basic human needs, I guess, given to them lead to any deviance, even though they have the shelter aspect, but there's the other needs that may be, a consideration.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen that these not so much, and I mean, these are more speaking about personal experience rather than what we've done for MigraSure, right? I mean, it's still often the case that, for example, even though they, let's say talk about the migrants that from Northern Africa come to Italy, for example, right? Even though they get accommodation when they're staying in this temporary housing, which is often this kind of refugee centers prolongs over time and it becomes too long, then they are easily approached by criminal gangs who entice them with kind of easy gains for simple illegal jobs they need to perform for them, right? And and then in the end it ends up badly for most of them, obviously. But they at the beginning, obviously, they see no alternative almost, and therefore it's easy them for these criminals to kind of like just hire, let's say, another pair of hands for what is very little to them in the end, right? They get, for example, exploited for things like, I don't know, even just in the black market, right? The black labor market, they just employ to kind of pick up tomatoes, like all over the summer in Italy, in really bad conditions without any, obviously, social security guarantee or anything like that, right?
And that touches on, yeah, I think it was 16.2, which has to do with exploitation
Yeah,
being a big, yeah, SDG 16.
yeah.
Very cool. Okay, well, my next question for both of you is what is one piece of advice that you would share with people to help create an environment where people and communities can thrive applying some of the SDG 16 um like oh my goodness, I just drew a blank. Sorry guys. Just by applying SDG 16.
Danilo, do you want to take that first, or would you like me to take it?
I don't mind. I mean, for me, I think it's essential. If I can go first, sure, briefly, and then Michael, please take over. I think it's really essential. I think what both of us have touched upon, right, and that sometimes still is a problem, and we've seen now also with MigraSure, right? So such big issues they are best solved in partnership, right? So public-private partnerships are essential in a lot of the things that we do. It still sometimes is an issue to work together for natural reasons and understand why. I think what it would be good for to see is a little bit more understanding of the different starting points of the private and the public. So a little bit more empathy, basically, with the positions of one party and of the other, right? I know that sometimes the private can be seen as being too greedy. Sometimes they are, so they have to be also confronted for that, right? But other times we are really trying to find solutions that benefit everybody whilst being financially sustainable. Because being financially sustainable, it doesn't mean that we're trying to make a lot of money with this. We're just trying to make that these solutions are potentially infinitely scalable, right? Because if you're doing something for charity, it's great, but you can only do to a certain point, right? But if you're doing something in a way that is sustainable, theoretically you can scale it, endlessly, right? So, and but at the same time, also the private often doesn't understand the positions of the public. So I think just empathizing a little bit with the starting point and then trying to converge on the same table, I think that would be really, really good.
And
No,
Michael?
absolutely. And I think, I mean, even on that too, I think as we start seeing some of these kind of superpowered individuals, superpowered companies coming out, like your Elon Musk and your Starlinks and your Teslas and your major organizations that do actually have the power to go into some of these countries that we're talking about and make a major difference almost single-handedly, right? When they bring in that business. But I think as we see that generation of these private entities that have the spending power, the money, the assets, and the capabilities that some small countries can't even bring to the table, right? I think, and exactly to your point, I think that's where the private public partnerships are really the key to the future, especially when you talk about stopgapping some of these areas. Again, whether it's crime, whether it's basic needs, whether it's future needs, but stopgapping those areas with private public partnerships that can fill that void where that local administration may not never have had the ability to do so, right? Or the innovation behind that company that come in, it can do it in a manner that that country or that local populace truly needs.
Yeah. What do you both, and now talking, going a little deeper with the public-private sector, right? What do you, from each of you, like, why do you feel it's so difficult to get sustainable and successful, or do you have an example of a successful public-private sector relationship that we could use as a sample for how future companies can work together with public-private sectors and how we can continue to scale that type of relationship because we know that it's going to be needed in the future. But yeah, I would love to hear what are some of the pain points about building that relationship, and also what is one example of one that's done it successfully?
Um, I mean, I think some of the pain points start with, I don't want to say that it's sometimes ego driven. I mean, even at an administrative level, but I think there's a sense that whenever private organizations start gaining too much traction, especially at administrative level, it feels like a stepping on toes. Even if that organization has the experience, the capabilities, the asset, whatever they're trying to fill into that gap, right? That administration can't actually fill. I think there's this level of egotism behind that kind of asks the question of why can a private institution do it better than an administration, even though that organization may have had the environment to grow, like a US based organization has the ability to grow and thrive and kind of bring in this new, logic, new intelligence, everything that a company growing, you're trying to grow in maybe Africa doesn't have, right? But I think there's that level of egotism that gets in the way that kind of hinders that initial step and that initial foot in the door to even start having those right kind of the future conversations.
Thanks, Daniela.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with Michael totally. I think it's also, what we're seeing that sometimes these partnerships haven't been successful because they were started without clear objectives, right? Sometimes, maybe both parties genuinely wanted to do something good together, right? But it was too vague, right? And so, without clear objectives, without clear measurable outcomes, then in the end, these partnerships ended up unfolding over themselves, right? Instead, when the objective was clear, the need was clear, and the need to find a solution together was really a specific one, like for example, to stay within the sector I'm in, and beyond my company, there has been other insurance companies that partner with governments in Central America, for example, to provide a countrywide parametric insurance against natural disasters, right? And these things are already up and running since 10 years and more, and they are running well and they're expanding because the need is clear and the partnerships was signed with a clear intent to help the country overcome this disaster if and when they occur, right? And it's just a mechanism that keeps refining themselves. So in this case, it works well.
Great. Is there what I'm trying to think. Sorry, we were supposed to have a third person on our panel. Unfortunately, Gary couldn't um join us today. He does not have power.
Yeah.
I think as we're coming close to an end, what is one last piece or advice that you just want to share with the audience or how they can better engage with SDG 16? Either of you can take it.
I think think of a good way to kind of relate this back.
Yeah, I think I'll start very briefly. Something that comes to mind is just, don't be afraid to look for for issues. There is a lot there. Don't be afraid to see how what you can do, and then whom you can partner with, and to experiment, right? To try to tackle a lot of these issues that then lead to violence and to lack of peace all over the world, right? And don't need to obviously try to establish world peace. Unfortunately, that's far away and it's difficult. Even small solutions to small problems, they in time produce a strong and lasting impact. So in the spirit of innovation, start small and then scale.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, with again, when we start talking about this next level of public-private partnerships, to don't be afraid to set a new path. And as we talk about, especially around this word innovation, logic, intelligence, spreading knowledge, don't be afraid to set a new path just because something has been, getting done one way for as long as we can tell, right? Doesn't mean that there's not a better way and better, culmination, a better partnership to get the mission done much more effectively in a much better manner.
Amazing. I think for the last few minutes we have, is there anyone that has any questions or wants to ask Michael or Danilo anything? Do you see any coming up, John? You can put them in the group chat or raise your hand. Go ahead.
Without going into an entire country and transforming it into a state, what are some of the things that we've seen succeed?
Okay, so we have a question from the room, from Chelsea. She wants to know, I'm sorry, Chelsea, I can't really hear you. You're kind of far.
So my question was, when you think about having to go in an entire country or region or area and really protecting and transforming it or inspiring innovation, what are key metrics of success, or what have they both seen work really well to drive change?
Did you guys hear any of that? Yeah, I think they did. They did. Okay, whoever wants to start it.
I'm sorry, I
Oh, you
didn't get.
didn't hear it. I'm
No.
sorry. Hi, guys. We're gonna have Chelsea join us.
Question from the room. So my question was, when you go into an entire country or region and you think about really inspiring innovation or keeping that entire, country safe, what things have you seen be successful from your perspective, Michael? And then Danilo, from the innovation side, what have you seen really move people forward and make big strides towards innovation and keeping people safe?
Thanks.
Do you have or do you want me to go?
I don't mind if you want to go. But
No, I mean, I think one of the things that's always served us well, and we do a lot of work in some of these austere and kind of unconventional environments, is, as funny as this sounds, I mean, understanding local culture, especially if you're trying to bring innovation, right? We've seen so many times of stonewall potential innovation because something comes in, organization, administration, whatever, into that environment, and they immediately want to change everything. They want to, U.S. has plenty of examples of this when we go into, foreign environments and the way we do foreign relations. But we go in, we want to, wave the American banner. We want to change the local culture. We want to change the local dynamic, and we start, really becoming gruff with the locals. And in order to really inspire innovation, especially lasting innovation, you need to do so and nurse innovation and this next development in a manner that it's cohesive with their culture, with their norms, so that they feel like they are, as a people, as a region, are embracing that innovation. Because if you go in and you go in hard and you change their culture, you start, you don't create that continuum effect, and there's no way to phase it out to where it feels more natural from a local populace stance. And at this point in time, there's many regions around this world where that does not fly. That will not work. whether it's cultural, religious, etc. Just know the environment you're going into and find a way to create that growth while also creating that partnership with the local populace, with the local culture and that local environment.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Michael. I think if I had to sum it up in a word, I'd say humility is what you need when you do that, right? So you got to be humble when you come in, and this is the same whether you are the US or a large private corporation, right? You are instantly labeled as arrogant, right? When you come in and try, oh, here I am, I have the solution to your problem, right? So I think the you know, you got to be humble, you got to understand what it is, and you really need to show that you are there because you wanna innovate. To kind of to solve a concrete social issue, right? To be honest, we talk about innovating. It's actually relatively easy to kind of entice people to work with you, because it's often associated with technologies, with trends, with people they wanna work with. When you then combine the clear social impact with the innovation, then it's, you get, the great thing is that you get a lot of talent, right? A lot of young people that you really want to work in innovation and sustainability. What you get sometimes instead resistance from is public authorities, especially local ones, where there's a lot of entrenched interest and stuff. So they see you as a disruptor, are they gonna mess up things that we've done since ages for a while? Again, there you need to be humble, understand where they're coming from, and show how you can do things better together, right? And not just imposing stuff.
I really like what you both shared. I think we're about at time, but I just wanted to share very briefly what you both shared that resonated with me is about kind of that humble nature of going into a situation and really assessing. But I think, what I've seen even with Michael on a personal level, Michael and his team supported our family and our conference and kept us all safe. And he thought of things I would never think of. Like he thought to ask me where I was standing in the room so that he could know and figure out, are there glass windows, right? All these things that are just kind of domain knowledge and expertise. And so I think what you both shared, that's really beautiful, especially, on this topic of logic and knowledge sharing, is how do you go into a situation humbly, but also, use and leverage that knowledge and that domain expertise that you have. So I love both of your responses, and thanks for answering my question.
Thank you.
Guys, for joining us today. We're so grateful to have you. I think that's about time. And thank you again for joining.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely, Christine. Chelsea, thanks for having us.